News Channel 5 Network. This is Urban Outlook. This program is sponsored by Connie London, a certified agent at the Insurance Exchange.
Hello and welcome to Urban Outlook. I'm April Eaton. Thank you so much for being with us today. According to a Washington Post article, it's called Home Buying While Black. There are subtle ways where race and class sometimes complicate the purchasing process for African Americans. In fact, a 2017 Redfin survey says that 45% of minority buyers asserted that sellers and their real estate agents may have been less eager, is the way they put it, to do business with them because of their race. We haven't even mentioned all the basics that you need to know, all the education that you have to get. So we wanted to take some time today to kind of test the market, if you will, to do a little real estate, real education. And if you're in the market, whether you're thinking about buying a house or just getting ready to save to buy that house, what are the things that you need to do? We've got two experts on the set with us today. Tiffany Capehart is a realtor in the Middle Tennessee area, and Blake Scurlock is a mortgage banker in the area as well. Both of you all sometimes work together and help those potential home buyers out. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us today. So let's start kind of with the basics. Say I'm interested in buying a home, don't even know where to start. So where do I start?
So where do you start? Well, you know, I always tell folks, you know, it's funny, in this age of Facebook, you know, I see posts where people say, hey, I am a first-time home buyer and I'm looking for a good realtor. And then you have 200 realtors that, you know, want to give their information to help this person. So what I always tell people is first check out check out your personal network, your family, your friends, people that you trust, people that have bought within the last maybe 5 years. You know, you may not want to ask, you know, an aunt who bought in the 70s because it's, you know, completely different market. Yeah. So ask someone who's bought recently, you know, who did they use as a realtor, and get those names, and then interview several realtors. As a buyer, you know, it's okay, or as a seller, it's okay to interview realtors. I think people tend to go with the first person that they meet or the first person that a family member or friend recommends, but get several names and interview people. From that point, you know, realtors often have teams and resources of people that they work with, that they trust. Similarly, like when I work with Blake a lot, I recommend a lot of folks to Blake. So once you meet with the realtor and you have a good connection with them, ask them, who's your preferred lenders? Who are your preferred insurance agents? Who are your preferred inspectors? And start interviewing those people and begin to put that team together.
Is there such a thing as a success rating for real estate agents? For instance, the percentage of closings or percentage of successful deals that they make, that you can also kind of look at by the numbers to determine how good they are?
Absolutely. You can contact the Greater Association of Realtors or their association. You can contact their broker, get recommendations. You can ask them for referrals. Say, you know, can you, like I said, if a friend or family member refers that agent, talk with them. You know, how was your experience? You know, did they find the house that you were looking for? Is there anything that you would change or do differently about choosing this person? So that's all part of, you know, interviewing people. But I think people don't realize that you can actually interview, you know, the agent that you want to work with. That
makes sense to me. Referrals are definitely key for me as well. So let's talk a little bit about this marketplace, because both of you have seen sort of, I'm sure, the highs and the lows, and now it seems the highs again. Nashville in particular seems to me to be just growing and booming, both commercial-wise and home buying-wise. So what is the state of the real estate market in this day and time?
Well, it's still a seller's market, particularly in the under $300,000 price point. I think, you know, when we drive around Nashville, we get the sense that everything is expensive, you know.
It looks like it in some neighborhoods.
It is. You know, and people are like, well, who's buying this? But we were chatting before the show and talking. We always talk about the market. the median home buyer, or the median sales price, just in January, was around $280,000.
Okay.
Before that, it was maybe in the $260,000 range. So you still see a majority of buyers in Nashville that are buying product that's selling for less than $300,000. So in that price point, it's still very competitive. Yeah, multiple offers being taken on houses in that
Wow.
price point, so still very competitive.
And Blake, in your world, you're seeing that same thing because you do the deal for them, right?
Correct. So the exact same thing. You know, the higher dollar houses, because that's the vast majority of what's being built now. The vast majority of houses are you know, over that $300,000 price point, and they're taking a little longer to move than the stuff that is below 300. You know, and it's still selling. It's just taking longer to go through and close and find a buyer for.
And who is buying? Because we talk about the first-time home buyer, and I hope that's who the market is. But when you look at some of the neighborhoods, especially some of our very historic and beautiful old neighborhoods that are now sort of have a new look,
Yep.
I'm wondering if these are flippers and investors buying the homes in their original state and then selling them at these higher prices that you all are both talking about.
I think it's a mixture of both. We definitely still see home buyers, you know, just folks that are looking for, you know, home owner-occupied, you know, buyers, but you do still have a lot of investors, and that's what happens when you get into multiple offer situations. It's not just another for, you know, people behind you that are going to live in the house, but it may be an investor or two in there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've also seen pouring into our market, you know, these kind of larger rental companies that are coming in and buying housing to rent for, you know, higher end housing, you know. So we've seen a lot of that. So you're not only competing with your neighbor per se to buy a house, but you're also competing with, you know, with the investor crowd too.
So that seems like, to me, that makes the competition really tough, because I'm saving my little ducats each month in order to buy, but I've got really a businessman who's also looking at that same house. So how do you compete and get in there, Blake?
It's I mean, going in and just making sure that you have having a great realtor, being able to communicate your story to the seller, that makes a difference.
Wow.
I mean, I work with a bunch of different real estate agents, and the people that communicate the best are typically the ones that get the deal. Stuff like, I mean, the first time I saw it a couple years ago, I kind of chuckled and thought, that's novel, but I've seen sellers actually take less money when they've gotten a handwritten letter from the buyer of the house telling the story of why they want it.
So it's not just a hokey little thing. It works. It tugs at the heartstrings.
It does. And people, houses are emotional things. I mean, like my house is more than a house to me. It's a home, and it brings so many memories with it. And a lot of sellers are more than willing to go through and want to do business with families so that somebody else can enjoy it the exact same way that they have. So, I mean, going through and telling that story makes a difference.
So let's talk also, because that's a great little point, about some of the other basics, because I guess I wonder, do they find the real estate agent first, or do they come to you, the banker, first, and make sure their finances are in place? More
often than not, I get the vast majority of mine are attached to a realtor before they even make their way to me. Every now and then I'll have somebody that will come to me first. Usually that's a referral from a previous client, and at that point, you know, they'll go out and pick their realtor, but that's a little more rare. Typically they've spoken with the realtor and been directed to me, and that's where we kind of get started. So
when they come to you, let's talk about the money. What kinds of questions should they ask themselves as a potential home buyer to get them ready so that they're knowledgeable about, first of all, what they can afford, how much they need to have for that down payment, what the whole loan process is like, and the percentages and all those sort of nuts and bolts and basics that they really need to go into the real estate office knowing?
Sure. Well, I mean, the thing is that there are a ton of misconceptions about, you know, what it takes to buy a house. I mean, people think that you need 20% down. People think that you need perfect credit in order to be able to buy a house. And, you know, every single day I do loans with very small down payments or no down payment at all. I do loans for people with not perfect credit, and that's one of the biggest obstacles that we have to overcome, is that a lot of people don't know that they can actually buy a house.
Wow.
And it's getting in front of them to let them know that this is a feasible thing for you and your family. And at that point, you know, yeah, there may be some challenges. There may be some things that we need to go through and work out, but that's why we start early.
Yeah.
You know, it's much more advantageous to go through and contact me 2 or 3 months prior to when you need to be out of your apartment, or, you know, something along those lines, so that we can get, you know, if there are things we need to work on with credit, or there needs to be a little bit of money saved or something along those lines, we can go through and work it out to where, you know, somebody's getting the best deal possible on their financing.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. And the other thing that I think people sort of don't realize is that sometimes buying a home is just as affordable as renting that apartment.
Yeah.
Because rental rates are not cheap either in this area, are they?
Yeah, it's creeping up there. I mean, for what you can rent a nice sizable apartment for, you can be paying a mortgage on a house.
Right.
Yeah.
No question.
Because, yeah.
Let's take a quick break, and we come back. I want to get some more of the basics of what people need to know, and also talk a little bit about maybe some educational opportunities that you all are always working on, so folks can get out there and start putting that pen to paper and figuring out their plan for home buying. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us.